Hey, how you doing, Keith?
Hey, I was trying to share it on my page.
And that's the thing, right? Trying to get enough time in between the show and the intro to
Yeah,
share the show out
yeah.
to many people. You need to share it some more. I can sit here and look pretty. Ain't nobody seeing me in
Oh
about a
my
week.
gosh, you really on one today,
Am I
bro.
ever?
Yes, you got real big energy today. But
So I,
I
I
like it.
was sick. I was sick for the past week. Trying to deal with that cold. Right, trying to find enough energy to keep going. Dealing with a lot of different things mentally, and that's why I'm glad we have our guest today. Right, talking about
Right.
mental health. She watched my children go through school. She was instrumental in helping me be able to talk to my daughter. Right, and
That's awesome.
so for me, mental health is, everybody knows mental health is key for Uncle P, right? There would be no Uncle P if I didn't get myself together mentally, right? And go
Right.
and talk to someone that wasn't my mother, my aunt, my cousin, someone that wouldn't tell me I will be okay. Someone that would tell me I need work. I have to work
Right.
on a lot of
Right.
different things, right?
Right.
So, I went to therapy early, found my dream, this radio station, and
All
now I
right.
have a purpose and I have hope behind all of this stuff. So, we're in a different room. I'm in a different room back here, trying to figure out what I'm going to do with this when I clean this room out. But, you know, I'm thinking, I'm moving. Right,
Thinking,
right.
decluttering.
Absolutely.
That's a
Decluttering,
good thing. Decluttering.
uncluttering, whatever.
They usually say decluttering,
Right.
but it's okay. So
Yes,
we're back. We
yes we are.
back.
Yes,
It's
we are.
another Sunday with me and Uncle P. I'm
Mm-hmm.
Lakeisha of Mind Our Own Businesses. I gotta scoot up. There
Just lift your chair up.
we go. No, I don't want to sit that high.
Oh, all right. See,
But
I'm up high. They see my stuff.
oh my gosh. Well, you see my name. It's right there. But anyway, I told y'all he is really on one today, y'all. He really is. But I like
Absolutely.
his energy. He's bringing big energy to the show today.
Absolutely.
So I am Mind Our Own Businesses, where we support, expose, promote all Black-owned businesses, especially if you're listed on our site. So go to
Mm.
www.mindourownbusinesses.com, get your business listed. We're also starting the promotion and just opened registration for the next Black owned business bazaar. So it's coming back June 11th at the Leak Center. Registration just opened, so you could go click the link in my bio on Instagram to register for the event. So we're looking for vendors. If you're a vendor, if you're a Black-owned business out here and you want to vend, you want to get that exposure, because this is here where MO2B, like, it's exposure and support is what it's all about for us. So hi, Fatima. So
Is that
nonetheless,
Fatima? Hey, Fatima.
yeah, Fatima's online.
Right.
So nonetheless, we
No, I
are
just want to talk. Can I talk about the bazaar real quick? Because I feel like
ab-
everybody that has a business, whether it's a
absolutely,
small business, whether it just started out, this bazaar is for you.
it
The,
is.
the atmosphere is, every time I walk in there, I'm amazed. Right, I'm always mad because it always happens when I don't have no money. Because I get paid on
Get
Sunday
money
and I'm
in.
broke by Monday. You know what I mean? But it's definitely a dope event, man. Well put together, well thought of. The people that come through bring energy. They bring great
Big
pride.
energy.
I love the lobster macaroni and cheese.
Oh wow.
You feel me? I always make sure I got enough money for that. Maybe grab a T-shirt, maybe grab a
Greedy.
candle.
It's
It's
greedy.
definitely dope. So if you are a vendor, man, you definitely want to get with them. You definitely want to sign up for this.
Yes.
Listen, man, let's keep on building up these Black experiences, right?
Right.
These Black experiences are what makes us great. It's
That part.
love. It's nothing but love when we walk in there, man. So definitely hit them up, get with them, and I want to see
Yeah.
you at the bazaar.
At the
CMP is
bazaar.
going to be there. We'll be there interviewing people
Always.
as
Always.
always.
Always. So that's the pre-Juneteenth. We get ready to kick off Juneteenth with the Black-owned business bazaar. So again, registration is open. Link is in my bio on Instagram, or you could just go to my page, www.mindourownbusinesses.com, go to the events page and register your business. So without further ado, you done with your announcements,
Yeah,
Pig?
yeah, yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
I've had enough. I think
Okay. So we are closing out Women's Month. Yeah, we've been all over the place all month long, and it's great to celebrate other women. We just recently seen, what is it, Ketanji Brown or Joan? What's her last name?
Yes.
All up in the news.
Right.
So women are being celebrated. Sometimes they try to bring us down,
Mm-hmm.
but women are being celebrated, and
Mm.
let's continue to celebrate women, not just 1 month, but
We
12
did.
months out of the year, 365 days of the year. Let's celebrate Black women.
No,
Let's celebrate all women, because we're,
you know what I just thought of?
what's that?
Everybody has a mother.
Everybody does.
So there should be a woman you would
Everybody came
celebrate
from a woman.
every day. Other
Yeah.
women you are celebrating every day. You should be happy to understand that you have a mother, you have a grandmother, you have a great grandmother, you might have an aunt, you might got some nieces. Celebrate women every day.
Woman in your life. There's always an influential woman in your life. It could have been a teacher. It could have been a guidance counselor.
Right.
Speaking of counseling, it could have been a mental health therapist. And we have today, we're going to close out the month talking about mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So without further ado, let's bring on our guest for this week.
Hey, y'all.
And that's Anitra Green, everybody. So Anitra, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and let them know about your brand.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Anitra J. Green, and I am a proud Chester native. I always start my sentences with that. I'm very proud of where I'm from, and everywhere I go, I have that in my bio. I'm a proud Chester native. And I am the founder of Tailor Made Behavioral Health Solutions, which is a mental health counseling, consulting, and training firm. And my practice is named after me. I think it's important to let people know that my maiden last name is Taylor, and I strategically did that because counseling is personal. And so for me, I wanted to put something personal about me in my brand. So I know that there's a lot of Taylors, and that's why the name is so long. People are like, Tailor Made Behavioral Health Solutions, but I wanted to make sure that name wasn't chosen. So I went with something broad. But the practice is really, we target serving all people, but my particular mission is to increase access to mental health services and education around mental health, because it's definitely a need for that. As communities of color, we underutilize services. We are not seeking the mental health needs that we have. And as a woman of color, I feel like it's my responsibility to be on the front line, pushing mental health and helping to take the stigma out of it. And that's kind of in a nutshell what I do.
Yeah, there's definitely a stigma behind mental health. I think people always used to see it as you have to be crazy to seek mental health. And we're all a little crazy. Let's honestly be real here. We all, I know you are too. But we all got a little bit of crazy up in us. And it's very important that we get out of the stigma of you gotta be crazy, or it's just not for us. It's for us.
It's for us.
Or just not saying anything. Right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you what goes on in this house stays in this house.
That part.
And we have piles of problems that have gone on since grandma was a kid. She has issues. She give them to her daughter give them to her daughters, her daughter give them to their kids.
Yeah.
It just gets passed down generation to generation until we stand up and say, no, I have to talk to somebody about this. I have to understand how to deflect these problems that I have and how to push them back and how to embrace certain situations. There's a lot of people out here that are scared to give people hugs, and they don't want to talk to it. What's wrong? Give me a hug. Now I'm good. Like you're that scared that I could hurt you, even though I'm not going to, but that I could hurt you, that you don't want to open yourself up for love.
Right.
And that's not good.
A bunch of suppressed trauma. It is.
It is real. And the reality is, Fatima put it in there. She said 99.9% of humans deal with mental health issues at one time or point. It's true. Mm-hmm. I go on and say, I'm going to add the 0.1. I think at any given time, all of us could benefit from therapy.
Absolutely.
And I used to always say, hey, if you have a problem, if you've ever had a problem, if you've ever needed a solution to something that you could not figure out, If you've ever felt overwhelmed, stressed out, anxious, sad, right? I can go through a whole list of things. And everybody, if I say put your hand up, right, and say, have you ever experienced this? It would be this. But when it comes to seeing it that way, people just, it's getting better. I will say, in this 1 year that I've been in practice, almost a year ago, I was here with you guys launching on 3/20 of 2021. Yes, where else would I get my start, right? The Voice of Chester. So I knew where I wanted it. Keisha, who also happens to be my cousin, it's a small community. So I said, yeah, let's do this. So I would say in the last year, I will say that I have been seeing a lot of Black and brown people asking for help. And that makes me happy.
That's
because
good.
20 years ago, when I started out as a mental health professional, we were nowhere near where we're at today. Right. I will say that things are getting better. It used to be people would send their children to me, as Uncle P mentioned. I spent 13 years at White Partnership Charter School from 2008 to 2021 last year. And it started out that when I started there, people were willing to send their children to me. But when I would ask the adults, what are you doing for yourself, right? You're saying that you had a child die. Your child lost their sibling. Right. And I asked you a question, right? Because I saw my role there as I'm not just your child social worker. I'm everybody's social worker.
Right.
So after you tell me about your kid, I'm going to pull you in my office and say, let me ask you a question. What are you doing for you? And a lot of people would say nothing. Right? I'm not doing anything. Right. And I'm like, okay, so what are you doing for your grief? What are you doing for your trauma? Well, as long as these kids is okay, I haven't thought about that yet. So it started with me giving people resources. And I'm saying now, as long as my kids are okay. But I would explain to parents, when you're not okay, it's going to affect your children. Right? If you're snappy, irritable, isolated, depressed, your children have to live underneath of it. Right. So if you help your child and you don't help yourself, your children are going to improve in some aspects, but your household still is going to be affected. And it's a message I push, but now I have moms who are coming with their daughters, right? They're saying, sign both of us up.
Right.
First, I called you about my child, but I also need support as well. Right. So I am happy to see that. I have a lot of moms and daughters who have come to my practice, whether it's the mom started and brought her daughter, or the mom called for the daughter and then said, I need to come as well. So I'm very happy about that. Still got to work on that man, Uncle P. I had 2 lone males in my practice in the year that I've been in business. I've had 2 men, and one was mandated to come, and the other one came with his wife. So we got to work on the men.
Oh, wow.
It's harder for men to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable, right? It's okay to say that, listen, this is where I hurt, right? And I need to speak on that. We have so many men that want to be macho, want to be brave, and keep on hurting. They're hurting others, hurting their children, hurting everybody around them because they feel as though they're brave enough. I'm not talking to nobody. I'm good. I can handle the situation. Right. I was one of those men, right? And I was hurting my children. I was hurting my wife. I was hurting whoever I was dealing with. Until I really went to therapy and I talked to somebody and he said, man, you got to grow up. You're 16. What you want to be when you grow up? Let's put it down. Right? What do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, man, I'm grown. I'm 36. Like, he's like, no, you're 16 years old. When you started doing everything you've been doing, you stop evolving. You stop growing. Mm-hmm. When you started making money, that's all that mattered to you. And that's literally, that's all that's ever. I had money though. I never did anything. I ain't go out there. I paid people to do it, fix my car, pay somebody to do it, bring my groceries in. Take this $10, $20. If I had money, everything was cool. I didn't have to do anything. But when he told that to me, that made me sit back in my seat and be like, damn, I used to read books all the time. I haven't read a book. Now I find it hard to read a book. I buy a book and be like, because I have not read a book in 20 years almost. Wow. You know what I mean? So now I got to get myself back into that mold of being able to read and comprehend and understand what I'm doing. But without me going to therapy, I wouldn't be here today. The station wouldn't be here today. And a lot of other people wouldn't be doing what they're doing today. You know what I mean? So it's absolutely dope to understand that he woke me up and that woke up a lot of other people behind me. You feel me? And got people understanding what they wanted to do because they saw what I was doing. So I definitely appreciate it, man. I'm looking for a new therapist right now. I might hit you up. I'm broke, but you can.
There you go.
Oh yeah, I got the resources. I got about 5 directories that I can direct you to.
Let's go.
I'm glad that you were open about saying that you came to therapy. I think that there's a lot of shame, and I joke with my friends in other fields, and I say, I'm not going to be satisfied until people talk about their therapists like they talk about their lawyers and their nurses and their primary care physicians, right? Because when we talk about those people, it's no shame,
right?
And then it's like, oh, I'm in therapy. I'm gonna call you back. I'm heading into my therapy session, and
Right.
that's what we have to get to. And I am starting to see people online saying, hey, they got the t-shirts out. Therapy is dope. Dope Black therapists. It's all of these movements now where people are saying it's okay that you have a therapist.
Right.
It's okay if you're a spiritual person. You can have Jesus and a therapist. Whatever faith you are, you can have that and a therapist. We are mind, body, and spirit, and we have to get our minds right. And my thing is always, we can't live our best lives. Like that whole living my best life. If your mind is not right, you can't possibly live your best life. If your mind is in turmoil, if you're always stressed out, if you're not enjoying stuff, and a therapist's job is to dig, like you said, is to make you be self-reflective, ask you certain questions. If somebody asks me a question, oh, you ready? Do you think I'm ready to be in a relationship yet? I'm like, what you think? Right? Do you have the mental health capacity? What you think? Right? No one would ever. No, I don't think I'm ready. Okay, because you're the expert on your own life. You knew the answer. Right. My job is to ask you questions about, well, what kind of relationship you want? Because anybody can be in a relationship, right? What are you looking for? I want something healthy. I want this. Okay, is your mind healthy? No. Okay, well then I don't. What do you think? Right? And then the person is like, oh, I don't think I'm ready. So our job, we don't give you answers. We don't tell you what to do. I think some people think that's what therapy is for. We don't tell you what to do. We ask you the tough questions because you're the expert on your life. I always tell my clients, you're the expert on your life, and I'm the mental health professional. So we're going to bring our expertise in one room, and you're going to tell me the challenges, and you're going to go through your journey, and I'm going to give you some strategies, and we're going to problem solve together. I'm going to give you some homework. I'm going to give you some tools, and then we're going to do this work together. You only get in what you put out. And if your person is not ready to change, you can't make them. I have a lot of people who call me and they want me to call the person and describe why therapy can help them. And I'm like, listen, if they don't really see, I can tell them what therapy is, but I can't tell them why they need to go to therapy. They have to want to do that. Right. You got to want to change. You have to be ready to do the work. Sometimes people come and you start peeling back the layers and it's like an onion. They get emotional, right? And then they don't come back. They're like, I'm not ready for this.
Right.
I'm not ready to talk
about that with my first therapist.
Sexual abuse. I'm not ready to talk about what happened to me at 7.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, we can take a step back. Let's do some education, right? You do have to be ready. There will be tears. It's not easy. But when you're ready, you'll know when you're ready.
We have tons of people out here that can say that they're therapists, like a barber. But to be a licensed therapist, what kind of credentials are required?
Okay, that's a great question. So in order to be a licensed mental health professional, there's a variety of paths, but I'm going to say that most people either have a master's degree in psychology. Some people have a doctorate in psychology, social work, human services. Yeah, all the helping professions. A master's, and then you have to take a licensing exam that says that you have the ability to make, sound judgment, because you are talking to people and there are times that you do have to give advice. So they want to make sure that you're ethically sound, that you know how to make good decisions. So they give you scenarios like this person comes to you. What would you do first? What would you do second? So you do have to take an exam. You also have to take continuing education credits to make sure that you're, up in the field on best practices. You have to renew your license every 2 years, and you have to be licensed in the state that you practice in. So for me, I'm licensed in PA and Delaware, and I have a temporary license in New Jersey, which I'm hoping it becomes permanent. But you do have to, every state board is different. So people think if you're a virtual therapist that you could just call me from California and I can see you, but you have to have a license in the state that you're seeing people in, whether that's virtual or in person. And that gets a little confusing. People think you're on a computer so you can talk to the whole country. No, you have to be licensed in the state like a medical professional. You have to be licensed in the state that you're practicing. So there are lots of, requirements. It's an enjoyable field, and it's definitely the need for more people of color. I say this every time I speak, that only 4% of mental health professionals are people of color, which is astounding. I did not know that when I entered the field. I thought that we were maybe 15 or 20%, but it's 4. So we need to do some recruitment because there's a need for more mental health professionals, but you do have to have a grace to do this work, and you have to want to do this. This isn't something that you do because you have to want to help people. It's definitely a grace that comes with it.
So
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I wanted to know, like, what specific types of services do you provide? Like, because you want to do this. So what target areas do you mainly emphasize on?
So my primary target market is 18 and older, even though I will see a 14-year-old. I kind of had to make sure that the kids, especially because of the pandemic. So I will take a 14-year-old, but most of my practice is 18 to 40 years old. My primary target that I treat is depression, anxiety, stress, life changes, life transitions, and just, regular stress. So there are people who come to me, and I do have a couple people who are coming because they want to work on self-improvement. They're not necessarily experiencing any particular challenge, but they just want to grow, so they are coming, they want to be a better, I have somebody that I work with, they're just like, I want to just become the better version of myself. So they want to talk about different aspects and different decision making and some of the things that they need to work on, whether it's being a people pleaser, right? I want to go this direction, but I tend to let people, I do a lot of things out of people pleasing. That's a real thing that you have to work on. Right. So it's not all about suicidality, although I have, if you're dealing with depression, that can come up. I have people who are just like, I just want to work on myself, right? I don't have any of the other things that you're talking about at this time. I had before. I just want to be a better version of myself. So it's a really broad range. And I also do a lot of grief. I didn't mention grief work. Grief is the area of specialization for me. As you know, I do Grieving with Hope, but that is my primary niche market. Right. So I'm kind of pushing my brand to be more of a specialization and an expert in grief and loss, because that is where most of my work comes from. Mm-hmm. And that is where there's a great need and not as many people want to go into that uncharted territory. But I actually have passion for it. So grief and loss is also, how could I forget that? That's my niche market. So I do grief and loss, and I also do trainings in grief. That is where I do a lot of my trainings, whether it's training therapists, professional development for schools. I've worked with churches. I've worked with Carson Valley, with case managers. A lot of people want to know more about grief, especially because of COVID. So that's where I spend a lot of my time in the grief world.
Gotcha. So after a year of business, because you're celebrating 1 year as of 3/20/21, right?
Yes, 1 year.
So how is business going? What's been going on? From where you started to where you are now, all of the in between, how is your business doing?
It was a journey, I will say. Things are in a good place. I have to say, thanks be to God. The first year of business was a lot of ebb and flows, a lot of learning curves. For anybody new in business, I had to learn about insurance, and people were like, are you going to take healthcare? Because these insurance companies be cutting up. And I'm like, I think I want to, because I want to make sure that it's accessible, right? To me, taking insurance makes it more accessible. When people can use their health card rather than cash, it brings you a whole different population of people. So I wanted to make sure, like I said, my mission is to make it more accessible. So taking insurance for me, I knew I needed to do that. I had to learn about insurance. It was a lot of learning, a lot of networking, a lot of going into spaces with therapists and, looking for mentors. I stayed in clinicians of color and Black, Brown, Delaware therapists, because when you know that you're new to something, for me, it's like, let me connect to the people who've been doing this. Let me find some people I can ask questions of, because people call me for stuff, but I had to break myself out of trying to be independent and, I'll just find it on Google. It's like, no, you need to call a therapist, get some new friends, new friends. I'm social, because it's a lot to learn. Business has been good. Being virtual definitely helped me with not having to do some of the other stuff, like finding a building, finding certain aspects, starting a business virtually. I think that's one of the best decisions that I could have made, because I did it obviously because of the pandemic. But people like virtual counseling. I'm a little surprised that people are like, And I'm always like, hey, I'm virtual. Are you looking for in person? And they're like, nope, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So I'm like, okay, I think the convenience of it, gas is high. You don't need to get a sitter. You could just, it's definitely convenient. And I'm able to reach people in places where access to services, like rural places where it's not as easy to find a therapist. But business has been good. I will say, starting my business in a pandemic when mental health was at its height, I think that was also a good decision because this business kind of sells itself. You know, mental health is real. You don't really have to do. I thought it would take a whole lot more advertising, but between word of mouth and putting myself on a couple of sites, the business came. I can honestly say it kind of just ran itself. Insurance companies put you on their page. I was on Therapy for Black Girls. I was on Black, Brown, Delaware Therapist.
Awesome.
So at this point, I'm at the point where I'm busting at the seams. It's time to grow. I definitely need to add another therapist, at least one, hopefully two, because I'm turning away a lot of people because I don't have the capacity as a solo therapist to handle that and the trainings and, you know, going to, you know, speaking at high schools and doing this. So it's time for the one woman show to end. I'm actually, you know, prayerful about the team coming because that's where I'm at now. I'm asking God to send me a team. If you're watching this and you're licensed in Pierre, Delaware, I will be posting something hopefully by the beginning of the summer because I definitely am working with someone. It's time to grow. And that's a good place to be in. I feel bad I have to refer so many
awesome place to be in.
But it's a good place to be. And I've made I've been able to work with someone in Africa, which was something that I wasn't necessarily expecting to happen, or like it was a long-term goal, but somebody saw alive. I'm on, you know, social media is amazing. And I did a training for someone in Africa, and I talked to someone in Nigeria, just doing like a psychoeducation session because I can't practice internationally yet, but just trying to be creative. Like, what can I give to someone on another continent? I can't be your therapist, but I can be a psychoeducator. I can give you a training. I can give you something else. So I'm just trying to be creative. You know, for me, it's about figuring out how I can expand my horizons and be out of the box in a non-traditional way and not just be a, you know, a therapist who just does just this. So I'm growing.
Let's take a trip into a session with you real quick, right? I am a 34-year-old. I'm a cheater, right? That's what I do. But I'm trying to change. How can one expect a session to go? Are you going to A, yell at me, tell me, tell me how much of a bad person I am? B, try to get me to understand why I cheat, right? Or C, not really care, but just try to get my money.
Okay, great. That's a great question. I'm not going to yell at you. One of the things that I will say about therapy is, like Planet Fitness, I always say my job is not to judge you, right? I'm offering you, and even if I have an opinion about it, right, or a personal opinion, when I'm serving you as a professional, right, that's here because we got to know our judgments and our biases. And I'm gonna start with saying that if that's something that you can't deal with because it's too personal for you as a person, and you know you want to go into that, which is called countertransference, when your own personal feelings comes out with the client, you don't need to take those clients. Let's just start with that. And every therapist knows their limits on who they can and cannot serve ethically. So going back to that, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm going to go right into, I'm glad that you came to counseling, right? I'm going to start by acknowledging the fact that I'm glad that you see your infidelity that you're experiencing as a challenge, because some people do it and they just say, well, I don't know what to say. I got bored. And so they don't see it as a challenge, right? The fact that you're coming to me means that you are owning that this is something that you need to address because it's not okay, right? And so we start with, I'm glad you came into this space. And then I want you to tell me about it, right? Because at the end of the day, every behavior has a reason. Why are you cheating? And it don't have anything to do with the person that you're cheating on. It's just this stuff, right? When people say, well, I wonder if the woman was cooking and cleaning, and right, we start blaming the people who have been, no, that don't have nothing to do with them. Why are you cheating? And you can't tell me about what the other person is doing, because that don't have anything to do with why are you cheating. You can tell me. I'm going to listen to it, but I'm going to be focusing on what is this behavior? Why are you doing it? What do you think is the reason that you do it? And then we're going to talk about you, and we're going to peel back the onions, and we're going to talk about why. And then I'm going to give you some homework, and I'm going to tell you to check out this article, check out this movie. I might even pull one up and say, I'm going to show you this scene from here because this sounds like what you described that happened in the session.
Right.
In a movie, this is what was happening with him, but what's your reason? I mean, so I get creative. I think it depends on a person, the personality. But no, I'm not going to yell. And I'm glad you asked that because I do think people think that they're going to come to therapy and be chewed out and hear what everybody else is saying when you tell them that you've cheated. That's not what happens in therapy. The other thing that doesn't happen in therapy is I don't get on the phone with my girlfriends or family and say, you know, this guy, man, X, Y, and Z in sessions, right? When you talk to other people, you can't guarantee confidentiality. You can't. Once you open your mouth and say it, not only you may or may not be judged for it, but it could become the next street gossip. When you're talking to a therapist, I could lose my whole career for violating your confidentiality. So for some people, that is something that is hard to find. I mean, how often can you tell somebody something and you know that it's just between you and them? I mean, honestly.
You can tell the Catholic priest.
Is there like a confidentiality statement that your clients sign?
It is, and I start with that, and I'll say everything that you say to me is confidential. The only things that I have to reveal is if you threaten to harm yourself, if you threaten to harm someone else, because I have a duty to warn. If a husband tells me what he's going to do to his wife and what he's going to do, or vice versa, then I have to report that, right? I have a duty to warn. I have a duty to protect people from themselves when they're not making good decisions. And if you reveal that you have hurt a child or elderly, I'm a mandated reporter. So if you disclose to me in a session what you did to your child or your grandmother or whatever, then I'm a mandated reporter. I have to report those things or I can lose my license again and serve jail time.
So would you report if I say I beat my kids?
Yeah, I would.
You got to report that.
If you tell me, it depends on what you say, because beating a kid is a very general statement in our community. But if somebody says to me, "Oh my God, I choked my child out," right? If they give me details that's defined under the Pennsylvania Code of Abuse, yes, it is.
So it has to be.
So I tell people that before they start talking. Not that I want you to conceal it, because again, how we describe abuse in our community and how it's defined, it's a cultural divide on what people believe abuse is.
Right.
But I got to go by this Pennsylvania Code description. I don't get a chance to decide if it's my opinion, if it's abuse or not. If these things happen, that's what it is, and I have to report it, or I'll be out the county, and I don't have time for that. So I let people know. I used to let my parents know, listen, I'm sorry. I'm a mandated reporter. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say. And pretty much anybody who works with children or who's in a helping profession is a mandated. The bus driver is a mandated reporter.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I'm not, and I have not in a year of work, and I have not had to report anybody. But I do tell my clients that on day one, I have to let them know what is confidential and what's not, because if you don't tell them that and then you have to report something, then people don't trust you, or they say, oh, you lied, you told me you wasn't going to tell them, everything that we said. So I have to be very clear on what those things are.
Gotcha.
I know I personally I know 4 African-American therapists. 3 are women, 1 is a man, right? But I'm trying to get to know more therapists, right? So they can come through the station and talk, because when I tell you, literally, if it wasn't for my therapist, I would not be here. So I understand that. And I'm like, what else can I unlock? Who else can I help? Who else can gain knowledge from a therapist? So when I tell a therapist, come through the radio station, I mean it, man. Like, come through, talk about what you do, talk about how you are perceived, how you perceive others, that you're not, it's a judgment-free zone, but they're giving you all the tools to help yourself, right? So, I love therapists, man. Like,
Yeah, and it's a whole list. So I mean, I can definitely let you know. I mean, Chris Harris founded the Delaware Black Brown, Therapist Directory. It's a whole Delaware specific group of therapists. There is all types of places. So I mean, I would be glad to share, information.
Yeah.
I do. We're all different. How we practice is very different. We all have our unique styles and our unique, niche markets that we reach. And it's a great time right now to be a therapist of color, because I just feel like with all that's going on, I feel like our voices are amplified now, because I feel like the stigma is slowly breaking, and people are like, okay, it's not okay to be okay. Like, how often do we hear that now? I wasn't hearing that 5 years ago.
Right.
I wasn't hearing it 3 years ago. I really just started hearing it in the pandemic. It's okay to not be okay. So now that everybody's ears is open and people are coming out and saying, hey, I have a therapist, I just hope that the momentum continues, because we need it.
We do.
Leslie, put that last question back up again.
See it. I'll ask it. Dante asks, how do you deal with people who believe they don't need therapy?
Yeah, I don't need therapy. I'm just here because my mom told me I should call you on the phone and be on this live, but I don't need therapy. I'm good.
That is hard. And the truth is, most of my clients personally who have come to me believe that they needed it, right? Somebody suggested it. Sometimes a spouse or a friend or somebody recommended it and said, hey, have you considered this? I'm concerned about you. The people who don't believe they need it, it's hard, because as I said, earlier, you have to believe that you need it. You have to believe that you need to change. I would say, if you have a relationship with them, to tell them, perhaps maybe if you have had therapy before, maybe you can talk about the benefits, or you can kind of say, hey, you don't think that you need it. It depends on why you think they need it. I have people that I think needed it, and when it's suggested, sometimes it is rejected. I'm like, you're in the bed, your mood is different. To me, I know that you're struggling with depression.
Right.
I'm close enough to you to know that those aches in your body and your mood has changed, right? And some people have acknowledged it, that they know they need it, but they don't have time, right? I don't know. People make up reasons why they can't get it. Some people know that they need it, but they're not going to acknowledge it, because denial is a real thing, right? That's not a made up thing. There are people who know, right? And they'll say they don't need it to you, but in their heart, they know that they do.
No, they need it.
No, they know they need it, but instead they're, drinking every night, get high every day, avoiding themselves. But at the end of the day, you can't run from you. Everywhere you show up, you're
there.
So for some people, it takes a crisis. There are people who come to me and they'll admit, I should have came 2 years ago. I should have been in therapy, right? And they'll say, people kept saying it, I didn't want to. But then what happens is you spiral out of control. And I tell people, come to therapy before it turns into a crisis. Go. Be proactive. When you notice that you're slipping, that's the time to, that your mood is changing, or that you're having thoughts of harming yourself, or whatever whatever it is. But people suffer in silence for a long time, and then it turns into a crisis, and then they come. But so much has been lost. People have lost jobs, they've lost their marriages, they've lost. Right? You don't have to wait to that. When you notice. And I don't care what anybody says, you know yourself better than anybody else. If people can see that you need help, I don't know that any of us is that blind to our own stuff.
No, we mask it very well, right?
Like we know
the drinking and the smoking and the using of drugs hides that very well. If you always run to that, then you're trying to escape reality. Right?
Yes, that's what you're doing.
And I had to ask myself that question too. When I came home from upstate, I was like, all right, I'm not getting high no more at all. And then I saw the things that I was okay with while I said I was doing that.
Right.
Like, I was okay. Like, what? Hold. No, there's no way. Oh man, I was tripping. You know what I mean? And then when I went to therapy, I was like, yeah, I was doing this, that, and third. And he was like, forget all that. Because you're not in that anymore. What do you want to be? Just there, right there. What do you want to be when you grow up? Right now, you're 16 years old. What do you want to be? It's like, wow. If someone would have asked me that question when I was 16 years old, I probably would have taken them and looked at them crazy. Because it's like, man, I got it now. I got what I want to be. I want to be a drug dealer. Because this is the best job ever. I don't report to nobody. I'm my own boss. I do what I want to do. But now at 36, it's like, no, I want to be a broadcast journalist. I want to create a radio station in the city of Chester. I want to bring that to this city because this city deserves that. Then after it's done, I can go ahead and go. I can go to sleep.
And a lot of things, I'm glad you went back to 16, because one of the things that I hear a lot is, a lot of people have these issues in their life, and they were inflicted upon them from other people, right? So when a person says, I'm this way because, life has been unfair or somebody abused you, the truth is 75% of people who come into my practice are just traditionally, their issues started in childhood,
right?
Because that's where your sense of identity is being formed.
Right.
So we have to go back to that. Most of the time, I'm going back to 16 and 13 and 12 and talking about favoritism and all of these family issues and being called names and the stuff that people do to children that affect them long term.
Absolutely.
Because that's when their identity is being formed. That's why you need to be careful with your words as parents and all of that, because we're forming, our children are listening, we're shaping them. And what we do right now will show up in adulthood, whether it's good or bad. You have to know that. Right. So when I'm taking it back to these certain places, one of the things that I say is, it's not your fault, right? But it is your responsibility to work through that. Because if you're struggling with certain things and now you're married and these daddy issues are showing up in your relationships or just dating and somebody says something to you and it triggers something and you're responding to them out of your pain and your past, you can't even really be present. You have to go back and deal with that stuff because it doesn't just disappear. You don't just outgrow it.
No.
You have to work through it. You have to work through it. It becomes layers after layers after layers. And then you're bitter and frustrated and
pissed.
All of this stuff.
Oh, man.
And it goes back to 16.
Then I'm going back. I'm just grabbing whoever I want to grab and doing whatever I want to do with them.
And I didn't understand that when I first started therapy. Like I was going for one specific reason. Like I wanted to deal exactly with what I was going through at that moment. And one of her first questions was, so tell me about your childhood. Like, how did you grow up? And I'm like, what? Like, I'm not here for that. I don't want to talk about my childhood. I want to talk about this issue that I'm going through right now. Like, how do I get through this? But it wasn't until I really sought therapy the next time. Well, one, I just didn't think that therapist was for me. There was really no connection. So when I saw out a person of color for a therapist, and we dealt with what I was dealing with. Like we talked about what I was dealing with at the moment, but it was the way she presented going into my childhood. Like she let me get all of that out of me of what I'm going through. She listened a lot more clearer than what I felt the other one did. But I still didn't understand, like, why we going back there? Like, can we talk about today? Can we talk about what I'm dealing with today at this moment? But it really is important to go back.
It really is.
Back some of the things that you went through, you heard about, you thought about, you saw, you did, whatever, because it does trigger and relate to something that you're going through in real time. So yeah, that going back, that's the real thing. And you gotta like you said, you gotta be ready and willing and want to do the work when you want therapy, when you know you need therapy, like when you need therapy.
Yes. Somebody asked, as an adult, when do you take responsibility for getting over your childhood traumas? For me, I would say as soon as you can. As early in your adulthood as you can, when you recognize that you have childhood traumas that need to be addressed, the sooner the better. Because again, if you recognize that you have childhood trauma and you deal with it at 23 versus 43, right. You have 20 years that lapse, and it just gets, with the rest of life, because the adult world is going to hit you, right? So you got your own current issues going on, melded with the childhood stuff, and this is how people get into crisis mode, or they just feel overwhelmed because whatever we don't deal with, it's still there. It's just sitting dormant, waiting for the right opportunity to show itself. So my thing is, as soon as you recognize it, I would say not to delay. Somebody said they should have went to therapy 2 years ago. They really felt like they should have went earlier. But my thing is, it's no reason to wait. The minute that you recognize that some challenge, some stuff that happened to you in childhood is bothering you, showing up or doing whatever, listen, as soon as you become aware, you might not even be an adult. You could be 19 and say, you know what, I'm recognizing that, you know, me not having a dad is making me snap out on these guys that's trying to date me, right? They trying to be nice, and I'm right? I have a 19-year-old client in college who recognized that her not having a dad, she feel like she flips out on her boyfriend. And I'm like, she's like, is this related? I'm like, absolutely. If you don't have that model, right? She's like, he said, I got daddy issues. Do I go, I think what he called it, right? Yes. Your dad being absent and you not having it, I think that is showing up in your dating relationship. And so we talked about it. So it is connections. And sometimes, again, other people might point it out. And she felt like because she, you know, she's a college student, she's thriving in life, you independent, you got it going on, right? None of that. Listen, if you have an absent parent, success don't have anything to do with that. Whether you making money or whether you're not, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It has to do with a void that a person was supposed to fill and they didn't. And that shows up. It shows up.
So being a child, right, that lost his father at a young age, right? I dealt with a lot of death coming up, right? You know, uncles, father, everybody that I thought would be there. So what ended up happening with me as I got older is I stopped loving wholly, right? Thinking that by me not loving them as much, they would stick around forever, right? If I let you know that I need you, you'll leave. So I have abandonment issues. I get mad, I get upset, I get frustrated when people leave. You feel me? Because it's like, damn, I thought we was going to be here and we were going to do this. Now, it's not just death that triggers this. You know what I mean? So I had to go back to my therapist midway through doing this radio station and sit down and talk to him about my abandonment issues. And he let me know. He's like, man, you really don't need a therapist if you understand the problems that you're dealing with. I said, but I don't know how to deal with the problems. You know what I mean? I can identify that I have this issue and that I get upset or I don't love people or I push people away or I'm just quick to be standoffish, like nonchalant. Like, I don't care. You can leave. It don't matter. But it means so much that you stay. But I don't want to tell you that because if I tell you that, then you got something to hold over top of me. You know what I mean? And that's how I see it. So when I went to him and I talked to him, he was like, the only way you can fix your abandonment issues is by allowing yourself to lose. You feel me? Like literally, allow yourself to lose. So if people are leaving, allow them to leave.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And you won't be upset. You won't feel no type way. You're trying to hold on to people that are trying to leave. So then I had to go back to my dad and I had to allow him to leave. You know what I mean? Like, damn, Dad, you left me when I was 12. I was a baby, right? I was a young man maturing, but when you left, I was lost. Like, I didn't have my father anymore, so I had to let him go, and I did that. Let's say about 9 months ago, because he was such a polarizing figure. He was a big man, so to me, he was my father, and I had to let him go because it was holding me back from being a father to my son. Right. You know what I mean? It's like, I could die next week. I could die tomorrow. But I don't want to say that to him. You know what I mean? So it was like so many issues that come from my childhood issues that allow me to understand that if you have an issue as a child and you have something that you're dealing with as a grown adult, you have to look back at that issue. You got to answer. You got to answer for it. Because if you don't, it's going to track over to your next or your children or the next relationship you're in or anything. It's like, it's contagious. The things that you go through are contagious. You pass it on. So that's why therapy is so special to me, man. Literally. Like it has allowed me to be my true self.
Yes, and I love that you say that. And this is, and I want to go back to something that I'm gonna answer this question. I want to go back to something that Lakeisha said about choosing the right therapist. I definitely want to talk about the importance of a good fit, because a lot of people have had not the right fit and they'll say therapy doesn't work, but what didn't work is the relationship that you had with the person. You just didn't have the right connection. When you have a right connection, it definitely can work. And I'm glad you're saying that, Uncle P. Do therapists have therapists, or do they believe they don't need one because it's their profession? No, we absolutely do. In my therapy group, there are a group of, there are people who specialize in working with therapists, because not only do we have demanding jobs, but we're human. So we have our own, whatever might be happening, because we're not, removed from life. We do this work, but we're human. And then we're doing our own life, and then we're managing other people's stuff. So you definitely have to know how to manage it. People get stressed. People have their own challenges. People enter the profession. They, people are grieving. There's a whole lot going on. And I've had a client before ask me, have you ever, I guess he figured, if you're saying that therapy is all of that, let me ask you a question. Did you ever go? And I go, oh, okay. So I see that you're a real one. You're just going right. I say, interview your therapist. And I said, I have. And I said, I went for grief. I lost 3 people in 9 months while I was studying to become a therapist. I've been in communication counseling as a couple. I've been in premarital counseling. And if I need to go for something else, I will, because it works. I've been when I lost 2 of my kids at school, at both times that I lost one of my students at school. It was too much for me. Like, I've never lost a student. And I love my kids. Like, I love my school kids. Like, I love my own child. So for me to lose a child, even though it was professionally, I was ready to quit the whole, listen. And I didn't leave because of that. I left because I relocated. But I literally talked to a professional and said, I didn't come into this field to bury kids.
Right.
I'm getting ready to leave and get a second career, because I cannot do this. Like, it was so devastating. I'm like, how do people deal with all of this loss in their profession? Because this don't feel is not a professional loss. These are my kids.
Right.
So I had to talk through that. I had to talk through that because I wasn't good. It was a lot. So no, I think that in order to stay healthy, and some people do it for maintenance. There's some therapists who say they just talk to someone because they want to stay clear-minded. They want to make sure that their stress level stays low. So absolutely, we do.
So now I'm going to bring something up because it goes along with that. I heard that therapists have the highest suicide rate. Is that true?
I have never heard that. I actually, at the time that I recall, a psychiatrist doing that. I thought at some point someone said as an affiliate of the recommendation, psychiatrist, but I really can't answer that. I've never heard that statistic in terms of what profession does, but I've never heard that. And a lot of times, therapists do have the wherewithal. I'm not saying that we don't have the ability to get to that point, but I do think that we're aware of a lot of resources and strategies. And like I said, knowing how to access services and what's necessary. And I'm not going to say that therapists don't do it, but I don't know about the high rate. I can't really, that probably has to be fact checked, but I've never heard of our profession having the highest rate.
So if someone actually wanted to get into this field, what advice would you give them?
My first advice would be that you need, if you're going to do this work, you really need to be a person who knows how to take care of yourself. Because as I said before, not only are you going to be managing your own challenges, but you're also going to be stepping into spaces managing people. I feel like you need to be called to this field. You really have to have a grace from God. I feel like I didn't necessarily choose this profession. I feel like it chose me. Everything about how I'm wired. People used to tell me, their challenges naturally. I'm a problem solver. So it definitely needs to be a good fit, and you need to be passionate because you are dealing with very, handling people will tell you stuff that many times they haven't told anyone else. So you really need to be passionate. You need to be committed. You need to know how to practice self-care. You need to be very self-aware because, again, you have to know what your limits are. If you know that, sex offenders, people who bother children are people that you have like something, that you're like, I can't do them, right? You have to be able to use good judgment to know that. If you know that you feel that way, then you cannot help that population. Somebody else can do that work. Mm-hmm. So every day you're making decisions and people trust you with, their life, and people are calling you. And so you just need to be a person who's, who can make sound judgment and really knows how to handle stress. I'm going to say that because if I'm having a rough day, when I log on with my clients, I have to know how to put that stuff over there, pray, meditate, go for a jog, whatever I need to do. But when you're showing up in this space, you need to be clear-headed and able to listen because Sometimes it's life and death. You know, it can get down to that. So I would say that. But it's a great field. I love it. I've been in it for 25 years. I definitely would not have chose to do anything different. I knew I wanted to do this. And so, and it is a great field. It is. Seeing people's lives change, seeing people come back and tell you where they were when they met you and where they're at based on the conversations. Like Uncle P said, he's still talking about his therapist, you know, the space. And, you know, as therapists, you have people that be like, you know, people have said, their clients have said, you know, I'm just going to say this. I love you, you know, and it's so sweet because this work is personal.
Right.
This work is personal. And when you connect with the right person, you got to find the right fit. I can't say that enough. Interview your therapist, find out what they treat, ask them questions, ask them, do they give out homework or what's their style? Because it does matter that it's a good fit. If you can't trust them, if you feel like you're talking and they don't understand you or they don't get you or you're not connecting, then you probably should switch. And it's okay. We've all been fired before. We've all been told, you know, maybe this isn't the right fit and vice versa. Right. Every client is not for me either. There are certain areas that I don't treat. I have to refer people. So it's a two-way thing about knowing, you know, what's best in order for it to work. Somebody's
what insurance do you accept?
So right now,
say, do you take Geico?
Do I take Geico? That's hilarious. I do not take, and I'm taking. So the insurance right now, I am, and I mentioned this early on, that right now I'm at capacity, and I probably won't be able to accept new clients until like midsummer. Because I'm booked and I'm looking to expand my practice at some point because I definitely am at that point. But I take Blue Cross Blue Shield. I take United Healthcare. I take Quest Behavioral Health. I also work with EAP companies, EAP, Mazzitti and Sullivan, Quest, EAP, All for One Health EAP. I know that Penn has EAP. So the EAP stands for Employee Assistance Program. I don't take Medicaid in Pennsylvania, but I do take Delaware Medicaid. Sorry, PA is ruling, and in the future that may be added, but I do not because that process is just very tedious. But in the future, I would like for my practice to expand to be able to take PA Medicaid. It's a whole process. But so right now, I only take private insurance and Delaware Health Options, which is Delaware's Medicaid plan, their Highmark Medicaid plan. Okay. But I do have a list of recommendations. Just because I can't help you, y'all know how I am. I have a list of therapists, Black, Brown, Delaware therapists, depending on what state you're in. If you ever reach out to me and I feel I'm going to make sure to give you referrals to other sources, because at the end of the day, it's about you getting the help, whether I can give it to you or not.
So before we leave, can you tell everybody where they can find you at?
Sure. So I can be found on, and thank you everybody for tuning in. My Facebook page is at TaylorMade BHS. I am working on an Instagram page, and my email is info@taylormadebhs.com. Yeah. So if you need to email me, I can be reached at info@taylormadebhs.com. And my work number is 484-840-3354. If you have follow-up questions from this, again, I can recommend you to other individuals. If you're looking in PA or Delaware, I have TaylorMade conversations. I'm going to be talking about stress. So tune in on April the 7th. Check out my Facebook page. I will be doing a live about stress management. April is Stress Awareness Month. Stress is a silent killer. So please check out TaylorMade Conversations the first Thursday of every month at 7:00. And again, somebody said, say it again, at TaylorMade BHS is my Facebook page.
And what's your website?
My website is www.taylormadebhs.com.
And you can also find her on mindourOwnbusinesses.com. She is listed in the directory. If you needed to hit her up, you can always go through there as well. So we definitely thank you, Anitra, for celebrating your 1-year anniversary and coming back and let us know how things are going with TaylorMade Behavioral Health Solutions. I got it now.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, she good with the name.
Having me. Thank you so much for having me. And May is Mental Health Month. So everybody take care of your mental health. Thank you for the anniversary. And congrats on both of your successes as well.
Thank you.
Congratulations to where you are and what you're doing as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's important.
So, guys, we'll be back every other Sunday. We mind our own businesses. So, be back in 2 weeks. MindOurOwnBusinesses.com. Make sure if you are a business, get listed. Registration is open for the Black-Owned Business Bazaar. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks on the Mind Our Own Businesses show with Mo2B and Uncle P. Y'all have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed.
Mind our own business.
And mind your own business. Mind our own business.